right, for today's notes, we are going to start talking about scatterplots and trend lines. So go ahead and fold your notes in half to make your little note booklet. And right here on the front, you're going to write scatterplots. And trend lines. Go ahead and write that down. Don't glue it in yet. We're going to write on it first. You can glue it down at the end. All right, so let's get started. This is so easy. It's almost crazy. Okay, so today we're just looking at scatter plots, which are these graphs that are an array of dots. And so we're going to just look for predictions and patterns when we look at those different data plots on a graph. So today our target is to learn how to draw or use a trend line on a scatter plot to make predictions about the data that it's graphed. And you can describe the association of a scatter plot. So how are these data points related to each other? So a scatter plot is a graph of unconnected data points on a coordinate grid. Direction, form, and strength are all considered when describing the association of data in a scatter plot. So we're looking at the direction of the lines, the form of the lines or the shape that they make, and the strength. And I'll explain what that means in just a minute. So first we're going to look at the direction. A positive association, this is kind of like a positive slope that we've already talked about. So as the x values increase, the y values also increase. So the graph goes up from left to right. We also call this ascending. Okay, and here's an example of a positive association. It looks very much like the positive slope that you see over here on the board on our word wall. So the data goes up from left to right. Okay, the opposite of that would be a negative association. So as the x values increase, the y values decrease. Let's draw some arrows to help us with that. So x values, as those increase, they're going this way. So let's draw an arrow that goes this way. And y values, as they increase, go this way. So let's draw an up arrow that goes that way. And let's do the same thing here. X values, as they increase, they go to the right. And y values, as they decrease, go down. That will kind of help us with our x and y association. So the graph goes down from left to right, which is called descending. Okay. Your first keyword is jack-o'-lantern. All right, if there's no association, it just means there is no pattern between the x and y values. You could also use the word correlation here. Or relationship. There's no relationship between the x and the y values. So the graph has no pattern. So if you look at this right here, the dots are just kind of all over the place randomly. There's a few little dots that kind of make a line, but they're really all over the place. There's not really a strong association like there is here or here, where you can tell the overall trend of the data. This one clearly goes up. This one clearly goes down. This one is just a mess. There's no real association. So if you look over here to the left, it kind of shows us some examples of that. This is a really strong association. They're not in a perfect line, but they're all kind of bunched together, and it's very clear to see that positive association there. This is a moderate association. Overall, they make a line. This is a negative association, but they're a little bit more spread out. And this one, at best, we would call a weak association. If you really were to stretch, you could say that's probably a negative association, but they're really spread out, and those dots are pretty much all over the place. So we would probably call this no association. Okay. So let's look at the next page. So now we're going to look at linear and nonlinear, which we've already done this year. Linear just means a line. Nonlinear means it doesn't really make a line. Okay? So linear form is when the data points on a scatter plot generally form a line. The relationship is described as a linear association. So if I were to get a ruler and draw a line down the middle of this one, this is a negative association, I could draw a line pretty well down the middle. I've got some on this side, I've got some dots on this side, but for the most part, our data follows that trend line. Your next keyword is broom. Same thing here, this is a positive association. So if I were to draw a line down the middle, it would look something like this. And again, I've got some data points above, some below, but overall they follow a linear pattern. This right here is what we call a nonlinear association. The data points on a scatter plot generally follow a curved pattern. So the relationship is described as nonlinear. Is there a relationship? Yeah, the data stays along a line pretty well, but it is not a line. So it's pretty easy to see the curve here. And then also there's a curve here. There's still an association there. We can still do stuff with that, not till later in the year, but it's not a linear association. Okay, so pause real quick and go ahead and glue that in. And then we have one more thing we need to do. All right, your next keyword is black cat. We're going to look and see how we can make predictions using a trend line. Okay, this scatter plot shows the relationship between the daily high temperature and the number of snow cones sold at a concession stand on that day. So we're going to draw a trend line and then predict how many snow cones will be sold on a day for each of these temperatures. So it looks like overall we have a positive association here, which means the higher the temperature gets, the more snow cones we're going to sell. Okay, so there's my positive association. Let me go ahead and make that green to keep with what I did on the last page. Okay. So I'm going to look at 82 degrees. How many snow cones am I going to sell approximately? So here's 70, there's 80. Let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, nope. Okay, so it looks like it's counting by about 2.5. So 82 would be right before this line right here. So that'd be 85, 87, yeah. So it'd be right before this line right here. So about how many snow cones would that be? It looks like at this point, that line crosses right at about 50. So I'm going to guess 50 snow cones about when it's 82 degrees. Okay, the next one says 100 snow cones. So I'm going to go out here to 100. Well, if I trace this line all the way up, this line hasn't crossed yet, right? But I can extend it if I want to. And according to the prediction, it looks like it'd be about right here. It looks like the y-axis is counting by tens, so after 100 would be 110. So I would guess when it's 100 degrees, I would sell about 110 snow cones. Okay. Our next temperature is 95 degrees. That's going to be halfway between 90 and 100, so it looks like that would be right here. And I'm going to follow that up. And it looks like it would cross right here at about 90 snow cones. And then the last one says 75. So 75 is right here. When it's 75 degrees, I can predict that I will sell a little less than 30 snow cones. So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's say 28. Your next keyword is moon. Okay, let's look at predicting the temperature when sales are $450. So if this is the temperature in degrees Celsius, so it would be much warmer in Fahrenheit, what we're used to measuring it in. And this is the dollar amount in sales. So let's look at our trend line. I'm going to go ahead and draw a trend line. That's about through the middle. Okay, I'm looking for 450. So here's 400. If I follow it across, 450 would cross our trend line about right here. If I trace that down, it's halfway between 20 and 22, which would be 21 degrees Celsius. So as you can see on this, it's not exact. So what you will have to do when you're predicting values based on a trend line is just look at the answer choices and figure out which one would be the best choice. Answer choices asking you to predict a temperature are most likely going to be multiple choice. You're not going to have a fill in the blank question or answer for that because answers could vary slightly. All right, your final keyword is Happy Halloween. Make sure that both of these pages are glued in. Glue in your book and then also glue in your examples. And then you may come see me for your prize and get started on your assignment.